So why are we here? I know some of you probably think that about school. I'm talking about in the world. And one of the reasons we're here is because of photosynthesis. And I think you're thinking, we're not talking about the meaning of life here. We're talking about why life, essentially. Why is there life? And life on Earth would not happen without photosynthesis. And so we need to, in biology here, we're kind of coming full circle now. We're near the end. And we're going to talk about why life exists on this planet. And photosynthesis is the reason. One of the reasons. But photo, if we break the word down, light, create, or make. So to make something using light, that's what photosynthesis literally means. So in order to understand photosynthesis, we first have to take a look at light. And if we look at light, the thing you need to know about light is that light travels in waves through space. Okay, there's lots of high-level physics arguments about the fact that light is a wave and a particle, and we don't need to get into that. Light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, the electromagnetic spectrum is all the things that travel as waves, from gamma rays, which are extraordinarily small waves, to AM radio waves, which are extraordinarily big waves, 1,000 feet long. And so the part that we can see, the part of the spectrum that our eyes are sensitive to, is a very small part of the spectrum between 0.0000. We got to get to the negative seventh here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 7 waves, the wavelengths in meters are this. So in centimeters, they'd be this. In millimeters, they'd be this. So really, 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 really close together waves. But they travel in waves through space, and the part of the spectrum that we can see is called the visible spectrum. And you've learned that it was Roy G. Biv. Roy G. Biv is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. The colors of the rainbow, you learned them as. And so the colors that we see are the different wavelengths of light. Every color, if you were to look at this yellow right here, that yellow is coming to your eye at a certain, the wave from top to top is a certain length. Okay, and a yellow wave is, if I have a wave that's got a shorter wavelength, okay, it's closer together from top to top, that's a shorter wavelength, I'd be moving towards the blue. So the longest wavelengths of light we can see are the red, the shortest are the blue. Now you also notice that in the electromagnetic spectrum there's infrared, which is heat. Okay, and we have special goggles that we use for, quote, night vision that help us see infrared. There's ultraviolet. There's some evidence that insects can see in the ultraviolet part of the spectrum. And then the other parts of the spectrum are up there. So if we're talking about light, the other thing we have to talk about is something called a pigment. We're going to take a look at some pigments in class, but a pigment is a chemical that absorbs certain colors of light and reflects others. In plants, the main pigment is chlorophyll that reflects green light. Now, if you look at a shirt, a red shirt, that red shirt is red not because it absorbs red, but because it reflects red. This red mark on your screen, light is hitting that. All the colors of light are hitting that. And what's coming back to your eye, if you're sitting here looking at this and this is your eye, what's bouncing back to your eye is red. The other colors are being absorbed in there. That's a really important idea. So when you wear a black shirt out on a hot day, you wear a black shirt. Okay? That black is absorbing all of the colors of light. And when it does that, of course, it heats up. because light is a form of energy. And so as light hits that black shirt, it heats it up. I prefer white shirts like this screen in the summer because why would this board I'm using be white? Well, because when light hits it, all of the colors are reflected. It's much easier to see. If the board was a different color, first of all, some colors would match and it wouldn't work. And second of all, you wouldn't be able to see as well. In plants, the main pigment is chlorophyll, and you learned about chlorophyll back in elementary school. Chlorophyll reflects green light. It absorbs most other colors and reflects green light. We're going to talk about that in some detail in class in the lab. Okay? And there are other pigments that are also in plants. And again, we'll talk about that in class also. So, photosynthesis. What actually is going on here? Well, the chemical reaction should look a little bit familiar. Plants take in CO2, and where do they get that from? They get it from the air. They take it in from the air through little holes in their leaves called stomata. Plants take in water. Where do they get water? That's right, through their roots. They take those two ingredients and they use them to make glucose. They give off oxygen, right? But the way they do this, the only way they can do this, is to have light energy to catalyze the reaction. A catalyst is something that makes the reaction happen faster, or at all in some cases. So if you look at this reaction, it's the opposite of the cell respiration reaction. In cellular respiration, we took glucose and oxygen. Animals eat and breathe and produce these as waste. Plants use these to make that, which is a pretty nice little system. So we have basically opposite reactions. The only thing we have to have in order to make that reaction happen yet is light. Let's take a look at how plants do it. They do it in two stages. The first stage is called the light reactions, and the second stage is called the dark reactions, and we'll explain this in a minute. The light reactions. In the light reactions, plants convert the energy of light to ATP, and you know about ATP. It's the molecule of energy in cells. So the energy of light, and I'm going to explain it in this graph in a second, and something called NADPH. I always remember this because it has P for photosynthesis, and that's a chemical that, again, as we talked about last time, carries high energy electrons. So the light reactions use an electron transport system. So let's go over this. I want to go over this on this diagram in a little bit of detail. The diagram isn't the greatest, but it'll serve for our purposes. Here's the sun. Light is hitting. This says P680. This is chlorophyll. When light hits chlorophyll, chlorophyll gets all excited. And when light hits it, remember that we said that the energy in anything is in the electrons. I'm just going to write those as E minus. So those electrons, this is showing P star 680, which really means that two electrons go zinging out of the chlorophyll. And they get picked up by an electron transport system. An electron transport system, just like in cell respiration, where these hot potato electrons are passed along. And in the first part of photosynthesis, ATP is made. Why did the cell make ATP? It's going to use it later. Those electrons go into another set of chlorophyll that is also being hit by light. Those electrons are get really excited and they show them going up, which means they're going to a higher energy state. So higher energy. They get passed along and get dumped into NADPH, which is like an energy taxi. We talked about NADH in cell respiration, same idea here. Now there's going to be a problem. And the problem is that as light keeps hitting this photosynthesis and electrons keep leaving, this chlorophyll, and electrons keep leaving, eventually you're going to run out. There aren't infinite numbers of electrons in the world, although it might seem like it. To us there are. There are not infinite numbers of electrons in this chlorophyll. So how does a plant get them back? This is where water comes in. Plant takes in water and does a little chemical reaction where it breaks it up into its 2 hydrogens and an oxygen and takes an electron, 2 electrons from that. That actually makes these hydrogen atoms ions, because now they have a positive charge because they're missing an electron. And so it takes those electrons and puts them back into chlorophyll. So if a plant doesn't have enough water, it can't do photosynthesis because it runs out of electrons to make ATP and NADPH. That's called the light reactions because they happen in the light. You have to have light to make this all happen. The second stage then is called the dark reactions. Now the dark reactions just don't need light to occur. They can happen anytime as long as the plant has already made ATP and NADPH. If sometime in the 24 hours the plant has made a bunch of ATP and NADPH, they're kind of stored in the plant. The plant takes in carbon dioxide from the air, as mentioned before, uses ATP and NADPH for energy to put together glucose. This is a building reaction. We used the term way back this year, an anabolic reaction. And anabolic reactions, you have to put energy into them. You have to build the chemical bonds. You have to put energy in. So we're taking building blocks of carbon dioxide and some hydrogen and putting them together to make glucose, C6H12O6. That happens in the dark reactions in the chloroplast. Okay? Now, a quick review of that is that all of these reactions, all of these reactions happen inside of a plant cell in a little organelle called a chloroplast. Chloroplast, I probably should be drawing this as green, so I will. Chloroplast has chlorophyll in it and membranes inside of there for it to do electron transport, and the dark reactions happen in the chloroplast also. So, quick review. Light reactions, use light, convert it to ATP, NADPH through an electron transport system. Those go to take CO2 along with some of the hydrogens here and make, in the dark reactions. Remember too that you have to put water in here in order for that to occur. So 2 stages of photosynthesis, the light reactions and the dark reactions.